Morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Last night, the three of us went to South Umpqua High School and judged a regional competition for FFA kids doing their presentation. And one of the categories on there was unison. Everyone had to stand up and sit down and recite everything all in unison. So if we were being graded on unison for that Pledge of Allegiance, I think we would have got a 10.
Yeah, but the up and down, we'd have got a 3.
Yeah. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have no items. I got this proclamation here, but I don't have it on my agenda.
Yeah, I think it's number 3.
Okay. Well, citizens' questions or comments on agenda items only. Seeing none, go for item number 3, which is a resolution. So, gosh, it's been a lot of years ago now, but when I started to run for county commissioner, I had people ask me, what does a county commissioner do? And the way that I described it, I said, well, all the citizens of Douglas County are in a field at the bottom of this very steep hill. And halfway up the hill is the state of Oregon, and at the top of the hill is the federal government. And they're both rolling large stones down the hill to try to crush the citizens of Douglas County, and it's my job to try to catch some of those stones. So this is one of those stones. This is a resolution condemning the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, recent imposition of pre-implementation compliance measures, PICMs, through the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, and Endangered Species Act, ESA. Whereas the federal, whereas the Federal Emergency Management Agency has recently provided notice to communities participating in the National Flood Insurance Program in Oregon that imposes new additional requirements on local governments related to the NFIP and the Endangered Species Act. And whereas FEMA's consultation regarding the new requirements occurred solely between FEMA and the National Marine Fisheries Service, with no meaningful input from or consultation with state and local governments, directly impacting local policies and operations. And whereas FEMA has not provided a sufficient regulatory basis or authority for these new requirements and has declined to go through a formal rulemaking process, thereby bypassing established procedures for input, transparency, and accountability. And whereas FEMA's new rules impose an undue burden on local governments, shifting responsibility for the implementation of these new standards and requirements onto local jurisdictions, regardless of the compatibility of these standards with existing Oregon laws and policies. And whereas it is unclear whether NMFS, National Marine Fisheries Service, will even accept FEMA's implementation of these new standards, adding uncertainty to the process and creating further challenges for local governments attempting to comply with these shifting and ambiguous requirements. And whereas, under FEMA's new requirements, local governments that choose not to adopt these new standards will be removed from participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, resulting in a loss of access to essential flood insurance coverage for residents and businesses in flood-prone areas, and the loss of eligibility for federal disaster assistance, as well as federal funding for critical infrastructure and mitigation projects in FEMA-designated floodplains. And whereas the Board of Commissioners of Douglas County, Oregon believes that the imposition of these new requirements by FEMA threatens to undermine local governance, disproportionately shifts financial and administrative burdens to local governments, and places critical resources such as flood insurance out of reach for the citizens of Douglas County and other communities across the state. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Douglas County, Oregon hereby condemns FEMA's recent imposition of new requirements regarding NFIP and ESA, and calls for FEMA to halt the imposition of these new requirements on local governments pending a full, transparent rulemaking process with proper public input, including the participation of local governments, state agencies, and other relevant stakeholders, and urges FEMA to work collaboratively with local governments to recognize the unique resource constraints facing communities across Oregon, particularly rural counties like Douglas County, and requests that FEMA develop a more flexible, transparent, and locally informed approach to floodplain management and endangered species protections that takes into account the specific needs, capacities, and existing policies of state and local governments, and demands that FEMA provide clear and timely guidance on the regulatory, financial, and operational impacts of these new requirements and clarify whether the new standards will be accepted by NIMS, and express its opposition to the removal of local governments from the NFIP for failure to adopt these standards, as if it will have severe negative consequences for local communities, including the loss of flood insurance coverage and federal disaster assistance, and urges FEMA to reconsider this punitive action. And be it further resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Douglas County, Oregon hereby directs this communication to all our state and federal representatives to take all necessary steps to advocate for the interests of Douglas County citizens and to ensure that the county's voice is heard in future decision-making processes regarding floodplain management and endangered species protections. I move to approve the resolution.
I'll second that.
Any questions, comments?
Couple comments, please. So, thank you, and Tom, thank you. I know you worked on this for a long time to get the wording right in the resolution. I was trying to figure out what word to use about this tactic that the federal government's using, and I think I come up with insidious. And the definition of that is stealthy, subtle, cunning, or treacherous. I can't imagine a better word to describe what they're doing here. They literally are putting in place a program that would take the ability for people to use their private property for some unknown purpose and expect counties to implement that on their behalf under the threat of losing any assistance from the federal government on several programs. That is absolutely treacherous on the way they approach this. And of course, like most of these programs, the citizen that comes in to try to develop their land or build on their property will go to our planning department, and we have to be the bearer of bad news. We have to say, "Yep, this is what you have to do." And historically, we have adopted into our ordinance regulations required, so I have one land use ordinance. From my perspective, I won't do that with this. I will certainly will have to figure out a way to implement it so that we can keep these programs in place. But we're going to be very clear that this is not a county, I'm going to be very clear, this is not a county decision, it's not a county direction, and it's something that we don't support. So again, thank you for taking the time to write this resolution and getting us on record.
Call for the question, Commissioner Kress.
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, motion passes. Next item, Management Finance Department Grant Agreement. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Morning, Commissioners. Dan Wilson, Management and Finance. This is a grant agreement in the amount of $1,189,755 between Douglas County and the Oregon Department of Emergency Management. The grant is for an installation of a backup generator for the courthouse and justice buildings. Total project cost is estimated to be $1,321,950.
We'll move to approve the grant agreement.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call for the question, Commissioner Kress.
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, motion passes. Item number 5, Planning Department. Public hearing. Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning, Joshua Shackley, Douglas County Planning Department. For you this morning is a hearing and order incorporating territory for an owner-initiated annexation of property into the Oakland Rural Fire District for property located at 5500 Driver Valley Road in Oakland. Chief petitioners are Scott and Kathleen West. Subject property consists of a dwelling on 174.24 acres and is zoned exclusive farm use grazing. That's our FG zone. Staff finds the annexation to be in compliance with the county comprehensive plan and statewide planning goals, and there are no known objectors to this annexation.
I'll open a public hearing, ask if there's any testimony on the annexation. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Pleasure of the board.
I would move for annexation of the property and order incorporating territory.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call for the question. Commissioner Kress?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. Item 6, Public Works Department. Morning, Scott.
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Adams, Public Works. This is for Fleet Vision. This is order authorizing purchase of 3 2025 Ford Explorer sport utility four-wheel drive vehicles from Kendall Ford. This purchase is on the Oregon Buys Master Blanket PO number 10700-00004358. This is purchase exempt from competitive bidding due to the purchasing order. Purchase price is $125,433.45. This is for these 3 vehicles, or for the building department, for our building inspectors. 2 are on the are funded through our replacement pool, and the other is replacing a vehicle that got totaled in an accident.
I will move to approve the order authorizing the purchase.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call for the question. Commissioner Kress?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 7, Solid Waste Department. Morning, Nick.
Morning, Commissioners. Nick Freisinger, Solid Waste Department. Item number 7 is an order authorizing purchase of 1 Kenworth T880 series roll-off truck for the Solid Waste Department. The purchase price of $309,109.07.
To approve the order authorizing purchase.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call for the question. Commissioner Kress?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 8, Commissioner's comments.
Nothing for me.
I was just gonna point out that I call most of these folks by their first name because we have a great working relationship with their staff, but I call Dan Mr. Wilson, and it's only because it makes me feel a little bit like Dennis the Menace. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.